Hello, everyone. I am Sharif, and I'm very excited to be co-presenting with Chantal. And our topic for today is empowering underrepresented languages with technology and AI. Jumping right into it here, the agenda for today would be going into why this is an important topic and why we should be talking about this right now, the significance of it. The next agenda item would be understanding the landscape of multilingual representation in translation and in NLP. Next, we're going to talk about the challenges that come with this domain, but also the opportunities, and then save time at the end for some Q&A. So, Chantal, how about you tell us about why this is important?
Hi, Sharif. So imagine if your culture, along with the stories and the knowledge, were lost, not because they were unwanted, but simply because technology does not speak your language. Today's young generations in countries where their family's first language is not taught in school or is not present in the digital map are gradually losing their language in favor of dominant ones. This includes language groups like Indigenous languages, African languages, low-resourced, long-tail languages, and other language groups with these type of names. Currently, roughly 43% of the world's languages are endangered, and many of them face the constant challenges of limited resources for communication, content creation, and localization. Tech and AI systems correctly serve widely used languages, but they often leave behind communities whose languages lack digital presence and support. This results in the absence of localized tools and resources, which deepen exclusion and sidelines thousands of languages, as you can see in this graph. When my daughter, she's 14 today, but when she was a toddler, we moved from Quebec, it's a French-speaking province in Canada, to Ontario, where the main language is English. She picked up English in a matter of weeks. She was 18. In a matter of a few weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, she was already saying some words, partly because of the immersive experience, of course, but mostly because every time that we use tech like voice assistant technology in the car or digital content at home, it was all in English. But her journey to learn my family's first language is much harder because she cannot access it digitally. And that is the case for all speakers of underrepresented languages, whether as an audience in healthcare, communication, in education, in employment, or as customer of products and services. They rarely get to be offered tech and digital products that are tailored to their culture and language. This absence doesn't just mean limited access to technology, but it can also lead to the erasure of local knowledge and cultural identities. We can change things. Today, my daughter is 14 and she's learning, she's consuming content and apparently speaking languages like Korean and many other languages that I've lost track of. She's using tech, but her experience is not culturally or linguistically complete. Global content creators and tech companies cite the lack of resources to localize products in underrepresented languages. This helps us reframe the issue, and it allows us to think that we can work on technology that can speak these languages. And we can say that technology does not speak these languages yet, but it can. Initiatives like African Languages Labs platform called Mansa with Sharif and Localize Africa's app called Engage Africa NLP with me and our teams are being built to solve this issue. And Sharif and I are going to discuss how tech and AI-driven solutions can help put underrepresented languages on the digital map. We will also review some requirements for building these solutions. Let's start with an analysis of the situation. Sharif, please walk us through the landscape.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chantal. So the landscape we're going to be looking at right now is going to be predominantly focused on the African landscape, mostly just because this is our area of expertise. This is where we spend a lot of our time and effort building technologies for. But as Chantal showed in the earlier slides, this problem transcends beyond the continent of Africa, and it's holds true for almost every part of the world that faces similar problems. But looking at Africa alone, the continent is huge. Africa is the second largest continent and makes up 20% of the world's landmass, right? And this visualization does a great job at capturing this, that the continent of Africa is big enough to fit the continental US, all of China, India, Eastern Europe, Germany, France, and so many other land masses can be fitted into the continent of Africa. So it's huge. With this size and scale also comes a melting pot of languages. The continent of Africa is believed to house more than 2,000 languages, right? That's incredible. That's over a third of all world languages are hosted in Africa alone. But the sad reality is that there's a big coverage gap when it comes to these languages, right? That less than 3% of these African languages have any meaningful technological support in the space of NLP and AI in general. And for example, you see that Google has supports 43 African languages, Microsoft supports 21 African languages, and Amazon supports 6 African languages. And even these support is the performance is much to be desired, right, for a lot of these languages. This is the problem we're dealing with. That said, there's a lot of opportunity in this space. Looking at this figure, when we look at the percentage of internet users who are 16 and above using ChatGPT as of July of this year, we see Kenya, which is an African country, topping the map. And we see a lot of other countries also at the top of the list. We see South Africa, we see Nigeria, and some African countries at the top, regardless of all these issues that we just talked about, right? This makes you really see that it's not just a problem, but also opportunities that exist for this space. And this is evident and mostly driven by the young population of the continent. And if you look at these two figures here, it's supposed to be a GIF. Let's see, there we go. So the left side is the continent of Africa, the population structure of it, and the right side is meant to represent some different places of the world. The median age in Africa, right, is 19. This is a very, very youthful population. It's the most youthful continent right now. And a lot of the youth, as Chantal has mentioned, are consuming media and technology at an alarming and really quick pace. So this is really an opportunity to work on multilingual systems, not just in Africa, but across the world also. Now, Chantal, I'll use you again and your daughter in my example here, where there are a lot of Africans or people of African descent who are outside the continent of Africa, who are looking to consume and interact with technologies in their language, in their way of life and their culture. It's something that transcends the continent to all these places outside the continent, right? And so with this landscape, and we're hopefully all on the same page now, Chantal, if you can get us started on some of the technical and practical challenges that we face.
Thank you, Sheriff. That's true. The aim of our initiatives is to enhance digital inclusivity by creating robust tech and AI or NLP models that can understand and help generate content in underrepresented languages. It is crucial to have a preliminary scope. In order to define the data collection strategy, we have to establish the range of tasks and applications that the models will handle. Creating data sets for underserved language present unique challenges. The primary issue is the lack of existing digital resources such as text, corpora, recorded speech, which are abundant in more commonly used languages. We're going to start with the key consideration for creating effective language data sets. I'm talking about quality. Obviously, we need data sets that are clean, balanced, and unbiased. A clean data set is free from errors, noise, duplicates, and any unreliable entry. We want data that is accurate and trustworthy. A balanced data set must represent a wide range of domains, registers, and communities rather than just privileging one genre or groups, or the model will not work correctly. To obtain an unbiased data set that involves reducing distortions that can favor majority languages or dominant cultural perspective while intentionally including diverse voices, dialects, and context. Unbiased also means reducing intra-language bias. Within a language, dataset could bend towards certain registers or social groups, for example, majority identities over marginalized ones. To avoid this, data should represent the full range of linguistic variation so that the models are inclusive. Finally, translation must not be unidirectional. A unidirectional data collection will introduce asymmetrical bias, which will result in poor quality outputs. For example, in domains such as we're talking about Africa, so culture, art, science, religion, tradition, and agriculture, where practices and vocabularies are rooted in local contexts and can differ significantly from external ones. Next, we look at data quantity. It is difficult to define the critical mass of data for training robust NLP models, especially for deep learning models. Sherif definition of how much data I need is you need more. So data set must be as large as possible. The more data we have, the better the model's performance. When a data set is insufficient, the first and obvious issue is that it will be incomplete because it's insufficient. It will introduce bias, and it will create a misrepresentation of the language in ways that would distort its true character. Why? Because insufficient data pose challenges such as the risk of overfitting. When data sets are too small, models overfit to the limited data, which cause them to perform poorly in real-world applications. Another challenge is domain specificity. When data is insufficient, most of the time it's because it is specific to some domains, so that the model will excel in those domains, but it will fail to generalize in different ones. In order to capture the full complete range of linguistic features, including grammar, syntax, idiomatic expression, and to prepare the model to handle ambiguity, scalability, and adaptability, we need to include data from a wide range of linguistic contexts. When data is being collected, a big challenge is to accurately capture all those nuances, because they often have less formalized rules and less available official resources compared to widely spoken languages. This shortage does not only concern the digital resources, but also the technical and linguistic expertise that is necessary to accurately collect, annotate, and validate this data in underserved, underrepresented languages. We do our best to collaborate with local language experts for a formal review of submissions that are made by linguists and by contributors from communities. These are often, because some of these languages often are not taught in school, so these are often professional linguists who have trainings in dominant languages, and we add that to their formal or informal knowledge of the languages that we're working on, so they can help maintain accuracy, quality, and relevance for the data set because they are professional. A very huge need for a project like this is that of infrastructure. And a partial solution that can be to work with teams like Sherif, who can help us with some of their capacity, their infrastructure, and their technical expertise. Sherif, tell us how you do this.
Yes, Chantal, thanks. That was very informative. So, assuming we followed Chantal's best practice and roadmap, and we have a really good quality quantity data that's been validated, the next challenge then becomes how do we get this data set to be useful beyond that? How do we teach a model? How do we train one to be robust and good enough to be able to handle all the things that Chantal just talked about? The big bottleneck when it comes to multilingual systems is usually the languages that are underrepresented tend to be highly correlated with regions of the world that are underdeveloped or don't have the same level of sophistication and compute that you'd find in the higher resource languages. So compute becomes a very huge issue, and compute in this case becomes we need really big computers, we need very big GPUs and infrastructure to be able to convert that raw data set into meaningful models that can be used in day-to-day activities, right? Now, what we have found is that usually if we start with small language models instead of going with big language models and trying to leverage compute infrastructure in very optimized ways, we can get around these issues a little bit. But that's just a big bottleneck with compute that it's just hard to get around. If you want to move from point A to point B, you need to drive or take a flight. It's similar to this. If you want to convert your data into meaningful models, you just need the compute to get you there. Now, even after you've managed to train your model, inference tends to become the biggest overhead with having LLMs or SLMs, small language models, where you need to host the models in a place where people can quickly be able to interact with it and get responses back, right? If you ping a model and it takes 5 minutes to get a response back, you're probably never going to use that model again. But having the model that's very quick to get inference back or response back also translates into higher cost. So that infrastructure that is needed to be able to host these models and interface with them in a quick and reliable way becomes a huge infrastructure bottleneck that needs to be tackled. The final option as an infrastructure level that we need to be thinking about when it comes to low resource languages and for building truly multilingual systems are the talents that are needed. Chantal, you mentioned that a lot of these languages are not taught in schools. If you want people to be able to help with the development of these things, they need to be highly trained. They need to be very localized talent. Now, it's one thing to have somebody who understands the data science and the compute side, but it's another thing to have somebody who also understands that, but also the relevance, the context, the meaning, and the impact that these models are going to have at the end of the day. Because we don't build these tools in a vacuum. We really want to get them into the hands of the everyday user. So having that blend of talent is also a huge infrastructure challenge that we as a community need to overcome. Now, we try at the All Lab and with Chantal at Localize to really get over some of these hurdles, but definitely an issue that we all need to grapple with. Moving on beyond the compute and infrastructure challenges, I mean, as they say, where there are challenges, there are opportunities, right? That also opens the doors for a lot of opportunities. And I want to start with some of the business case that can be made for building for multilingual and low resource languages. The first and most obvious one is just the untapped market, the scale of the market, the billions of people who exist and use these low resource languages who probably do not even read or write in English and other high resource languages that can be reached by building systems that are more multilingual and reach their languages is immense. So that's the first business case. Now, if you're a researcher or innovator, want to just build something that's novel and makes an impact, being in this space because it's under-researched, it's under-resourced. So being here, you're able to make direct impact and build novel IP and technologies that broadly impact the world at large beyond incremental progress that you get with some of these high resource languages. Now, strategically, you're able to work with national initiatives, initiatives like the World Bank, the United Nations, and other NGOs and universities and research grants that working in this space unlocks rather than working in the high resource language space. The final business case that we want to highlight is the brand and talent value. If you're working in these languages, they tend to be really, really loyal to folks who are doing work in their language. But also there's the access to all the youth and the innovation and all their energy that you can get behind your initiative. So Chantal, tell us about the other cases.
Thank you, Sharif. Beyond the immediate financial benefits of offering digital access in underserved languages for businesses, governments and organizations can leverage these tools and platforms to drive innovation and offer communication, content, and services that are tailored to local, cultural, and linguistic needs. When we create tech and AI-driven tools for underserved languages, we don't just help promote them. We make them available for grassroots language information systems to help outcomes in health, education, and employment. Other obvious benefits are artistic and cultural. Your technology also opens opportunities in scientific sectors. There is a lot of medical knowledge and healing tools and practices that are still untapped because they are only available to people in small communities who speak those languages. but they're not being included in modern training programs. The last but not least benefit of working on these tools is the ability to freeze these languages in time in order to preserve their richness before they degrade, because current fluent speakers are disappearing. Global languages evolve through modernization, but underserved languages often decline. When we freeze them digitally in their current state, we safeguard their vocabulary, their expressions, their cultural depth, and we ensure that future generations will inherit a complete and living record rather than fragments of what once existed, and that has been contaminated with global languages or poor practice. So let's frame the tech. At Localize Africa, we are creating an NLP tool to preserve and promote low-resource African languages. And we are focusing on Cameroonian languages for now, like Womala, Fufude, Bassa, Douala, Iwondo, Kamfranglais, Pidgin, and more. Cameroon is one of the countries in the world with the most languages, 250 to 300. So we need to choose some priority languages. Our method is a platform that we call Engage Africa NLP. It's available on iOS, Android, and as a web app. It is currently a technology building tool. It will be scaled to become a technology access tool once the models are available. In our first iteration, we focused on Womala. For example, it's a language that is spoken primarily in the western region of Cameroon. And Sherif mentioned population mobility. Most of the Womala speakers are not in Cameroon, and they are not in the region where the language is implanted. It has global footprints. Despite its rich cultural significance and having over 2.8 million speakers, it has limited technological resources. It's a shame, no digital presence. That makes it a prime candidate for our initial data collection efforts. What are our methods? Professional translators and linguists to provide accurate translations and ensure linguistic integrity. And this helps us establish a strong baseline data because we also work with communities. We have features for feedback and discussions. We allow users to comment on content that has been entered, whatever that is available. This helps us in refining translations, but also aids in understanding the nuances of the language and dialect variations. With 250 languages, we cannot have enough team members to understand everything that is happening. So it's great that we have these feedback features. There's upvote, users can upvote and downvote. Communities can comment, offer alternatives for translations. And this process is vital for languages that don't have a lot of, that don't have formalized or standardized rules. And it serves as a pre-filter before we can now get validators to work on the data that is available. And it helps also with quality assurance. So users can contribute text. They can request translations. The user looks at what we have and we are not talking about this thing, and they are in that community, so they know that this is a topic of conversation. They will request translation. They can do the translation or they may not do, but at least doing that helps us increase our database. So with this gamification and community contribution, we have an informal peer review, and it promotes a better quality contributions. And we don't have an experience of a lot of poor or incorrect submissions. This is how we collect data, and when we have that, we pass the data on to Sherif's team. Sherif, tell us what you do with data.
Yes, Chantal. Thanks. So, having collaborated with amazing groups like Chantal and working with open source communities and in-house data collection, we are very excited to showcase one of our technologies, which we call Mansa Translate, which is a unified contextual translation model that is currently capable of doing translations in 20 African languages. And we're very excited that we want to expand this language coverage to 40 African languages by the close of the year. It's very exciting to see this come together. As you see in this video that's shown, you're able to get instantaneous response to that. We've tried our best to address some of those issues that we just highlighted at the beginning of this presentation. So at this point, a quick summary of what we've been trying to say is improving the digital access for underserved languages goes beyond just the altruistic goal, but it preserves 2,500 languages worldwide, unlocks billions in new markets, creates millions of jobs, and strengthens cultural identity for over 3 billion people. So thank you so much for listening to us. We're gonna stick around for questions, and yeah, I'm Sharif, and that was Chantal.
Thank you.
Thank you.